Hey everybody, KC here. Interesting piece I was just reading in Business Insider about a new trend that's being seen in some companies. The idea is to create a chief purpose officer in the C-suite, and that person's job is to, quote, connect the company and its employees to a purpose at work. And this is seen, at least in the case of the Business Insider story, as one way of addressing the notion of burnout. When people get burned out, a lot of different companies have different reactions to it. One is to say, put your nose to the grindstone, keep working. One is to give people more time off. One is to allow them to bring their puppies to work. You know, there's a lot of different ways companies can react to it. But the notion of a chief purpose officer actually is similar to something that we've talked a lot about here on Morning Newsview, which is if company employees really understand a company's history, its motivations, its purposes, its goals, okay, that makes them feel more invested in the business. It doesn't work all by itself, but it's one way of keeping people invested in the business in a way that they're going to perform at a higher, a higher level and do things that are going to help the business long term. Now, you know, it's interesting. One of the things that I remember Fergal Quinn back in Ireland, in Super Quinn, one of the things that he would do is, I think it was monthly or quarterly, he and the executive team would fan out to the various stores and they would talk to the store manager, the department managers, the employees, and they would open the books to them, explain how the different departments were performing in the store relative to each other, how they were performing relative to similar departments in other stores, how the store was performing relative to other stores. So people would have a sense of where they fit into the continuum and give them something to measure their performance against. And I mean, that was just part of it. The fact that they were there and they were a visible presence and leading by example was one way to have people understand what the broader purpose of the company was. It was never just about selling groceries. There was a higher calling involved. And I think that's really a smart thing to do. And listen, and it works, I think. I mean, you would hope that upper management in companies have a sense of the larger purpose. Hopefully middle management employees do, but especially in a retail business, frontline employees, if they have a sense of the greater whole, and where they fit into it, it's going to affect how they perform in their jobs. And, you know, and yeah, maybe they're less concerned about that than making a paycheck and going off and hanging with their friends. But I think there's a way to explain to them why this kind of stuff is important. I always use the example about how my son Brian was a barista at Starbucks for a period of time. And you know, I think he had a sense of where he fit into the whole and what he was learning when he wrote his college entry essay, admission essay about, he sort of laid out the toughest drink that he could possibly make while working as a barista. And then he kind of framed it in a really difficult, busy time, explained the whole process. It was really, really complicated and finished up by saying, if I can do that, I can do anything, right? He saw that as training for the ability to multitask, to work with people, to juggle a lot of different kinds of things. It was a really important way of connecting him to not only the goals of the company, but also how the goals of the company would serve him long term. You know, it's really all about it's part of creating a culture of caring. Some companies see this as, you know, as having an ESG orientation, environmental, social, governance. Not all companies do that. There's a backlash in some parts of the culture against that. Don't completely understand why environmental, social, and governance is a bad thing, but, you know, I'll leave that to other people to answer. But one of the things it does is when companies are having a hard time or they've hit a rough patch, having a sense of purpose, having a larger sense of the organization is actually good for business. Some companies that have these chief purpose officers doing the job, they find it's a really good way of both retaining talent and attracting talent because it establishes this larger purpose. You know, it really helps in an organization to have a North Star. And this is not just being touchy-feely. It's actually good for business. And I think it's important that people allow their companies to, first of all, be connected to a sense of purpose, and then make sure that their employees are connected to it as well. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.